you shivery boy? Too cold, huh? Got no fur blankie left. Got no fur blankie left. Oh, day. Just a chilly willy. You just a chilly willy gumdrop. Oh, whoa, look at all of you. This is piss with ink. Look at all of you freaks. Freaks of the week. Back on the road, Phoebes. In the van or whatever. Ooh, that's cool. Yeah. Where have I been? Right here. Oh, I've been right here. The blurry filter. I don't know what's going on. My camera's probably funky. Let's see. Yeah, it's called a smudge. Paul's ego, that's me. That's my name. Don't wear it out. I guess we're gonna have to just stay a little smudgy. Like my thumb just made it worse. Howdy, Paul, where you is? In the backyard of my house. This is gonna be like the first full day where it doesn't rain in like a month.
Yeah.
Maybe more, maybe slightly more. It's been raining since mid-late December here. Definitely the most consecutive days of rain that I've ever experienced in California. Yeah, it's unprecedented as far as I'm concerned. A lot of people were saying like it's like a once in a century storm or something, maybe even more. Just like a once in a century event. Literally binged watched all of Highdeology up until February of last year. There's a lot of salty Paul due to the Ukraine war. Wish you'd have more fun. I do. I have plenty of fun. Don't worry about my fun. You worry about your fun. Okay? You're in charge of your fun. Clean this a little better. This will get it as good as it's gonna get. Oh, there we go. That's better. That's better. But yeah, I mean, as far as that stuff goes, my opinions haven't changed. I just took a huge step back from politics in general. Politics, news, whatever. I just stopped. My boys out here enforcing the rules already. I've missed your dulcet tones. Same thing happened when you expressed anti-voting opinions. Nothing new. Yeah. So I guess the update in the ongoing, I guess Paul was right saga is I've seen quite a few people espousing the same things about AOC and the squad that I espoused from the very beginning. Just the way it goes, you know. A lot of people saying that, specifically AOC is like a career woman and more concerned with climbing up the ladder of power than she is with making good on any of the promises she made in her campaign. And, those of you that have been around a long time will remember that I've been saying exactly that for at least, 3 years? And I caught maybe not more shit, but a pretty commensurate amount of shit for espousing that opinion and refusing to change my tune. And now it just seems like it's just becoming like, common knowledge. Just like, oh yeah, AOC. Kyle's videos are some of the only ones that I watch anymore with a political twinge, and he was covering this very subject the other night. She gave some interview where she basically says the quiet part loud. She's like, because people were asking, like, now that we've seen, the radical wing of the Republican Party use the tactics that people asked the squad to use in terms of holding up necessary legislation, and we've seen, maybe not in the adoption of the entirety of their platform, but we've seen them gain certain certain amounts of leeway within the party. Like, they've made strides towards getting what they want. And somebody asked AOC, why didn't the squad do the same thing? And she gave, the politician's answer, which is like, well, you damage relationships in your party and damage your reputation. It's just like, not a single fucking person elected you so that you could maintain your reputation. Not a single fucking person cares about the politics of Capitol Hill. She's acting like being in good with Congress is something people want her to do. No. That's the opposite of what people want you to do. Look at congressional approval ratings. People don't like Congress. So. But it's just one of those things. I think the next big sea change in opinion is going to come via the Ukraine war. I think that there's going to be, I think there already are quite a bit of the American populace pretty much agrees with me now, I think. If you look at the polls, there are certainly some outliers and stuff like that, but quite a bit of the American populace is tuned into the fact that maybe it's not a good thing for people in Ukraine and not a good thing for people in the United States that we're dumping more and more weapons in that country. And, I don't know. What am I going to say, dude? Just catching shit constantly for being correct. I look like like Alan Moore. You're not the first to tell me. Thank you. I did not. I did not write the Watchmen. I'm not the author of the Watchmen comic books. Isn't that Alan Moore? Or is that somebody else? I think that's Alan Moore. They hated Paul because he told them the truth. Oh yeah. There's like an unwritten list of rules to remaining in the good graces of a political audience these days that I just don't follow. Extraordinary gentleman, Paul Zito. You totally do look like him. I know. I've seen the pictures. What is it about becoming a politician that just destroys your goodwill into a corrupt method? Capitalism. Period. Full stop. Capitalism has long ago infested the halls of power and created a legion of politicians who care more about padding their wallet and taking their golf junket than they do making good on any of the things that they promise. Yeah, I finished The Wire a long time ago. I finished The Wire a long time ago. I'm watching Breaking Bad now. Finally. Finally. Can you perform Hamlet on DFF? No. No, I'm definitely not a Hamlet type. Hamlet's like a hot, young, prince. I'm a crusty old bag of bones. Hair is really flowing. Yeah, I guess so. Guess that's what it do. Shoes. What am I supposed to do? Duck? Is there a sniper? What do you think Americans will do when automation almost fully takes over the workforce? Most are against UBI. I think that will change. I think that'll have to change. I mean, there's no reason to make consumer goods without consumers to consume them. So people are gonna need purchasing power, and so I think some form of a UBI is definitely coming. By the time it gets here, it will be insufficient for sure. But Paul, what if you wrote for a local newspaper, tried to influence your immediate community? My immediate community would not be influenced. I live in a pretty resoundingly conservative area, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Who reads newspapers these days? Boomers, old people, people that are in the people are in the news industry make money off of AI work. I mean, that's going to be an emergent frontier for sure. I think the best way to affect politics is local activism and more simply just getting to know your own community. Sure, I mean, that's definitely something that you can do. I like the little comic strips in the newspapers. Me too. It used to be my favorite part of reading the newspaper back when I was a newspaper reader. It's like you get through the rest of it and then you save the comic strips. That's your reward for getting through the actual news. See what Archie's up to, or I don't even know what comic strips are still around. I haven't made one of these in a while, so that would explain why you haven't caught one in a while. Ready for Dune Part 2 this year? No. No, I'm not prepared. No, I think it's going to be good. I think they picked a good fade. Austin Butler, the dude that played Elvis, is going to play Fade Routha, which is cool. I think that's a good selection. Let's pick the dude that looks like Elvis. I was not very impressed with that movie, but I was impressed with his portrayal. Is that true? That is true, yes. Yeah, because quite honestly, he doesn't look a whole lot like Elvis, but he managed to embody the spirit of Elvis.
I mean, really, the only thing that just kind of rubbed us the wrong way is just Baz Luhrmann being Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah, it's a Baz Luhrmann film. It's just like a big line of Speed or something. Weird, like modern music thrown into it, which, whatever. Just like Doja Cat and strange hip hop R&B artists. Oh man. The Weird Al biopic, yeah. Yeah, I've heard good things about it. It's a strange casting choice, but whatever. I was kind of waiting to watch the first part until the second part comes out. That's probably smart. I'll probably end up watching the first part in preparation for the second part, just to kind of like. I think it's possible to adapt God Emperor. It's possible. Is it probable that they'll get that far? No. No.
I think I'd only trust David Lynch to really visualize God Emperor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would take it would take somebody with a very strange perspective to do it properly. Hope Denis does all of them. Yeah, me too. Continuity. You see what happens when you get different creative teams behind an ongoing story with the Star Wars prequels, sequels. Was there actually a pug in the Lynch Dune? Yes, there was.
Why? Just 'cause.
Yeah. Because why not? That's why. Because why the fuck not?
I'm too chilly, Willy Gumdrops, dude. Would you like some coffee?
I would love some coffee. Thank you, baby. Most annoying thing in the world is people who think the prequels are good now. Yeah. I don't know if they're the most annoying people in the world, but yeah, it's pretty fucking annoying. I'll be honest with you. Not gonna lie, pretty fucking annoying. I really want that Blade Runner 2049 director's cut. Yeah, you're never gonna get it. I've not seen a lot of movies. I've been caught in one of my interminable loops of rewatching films, which is fine. But yeah, I haven't really seen a whole lot of newer movies. On the show today, I'm gonna try and run by the guys my views on ghosts. TJ was doing a stream the other day. I tuned in for just a few minutes, and I just happened to tune in. He was talking about me. Somebody asked if I believed in ghosts, and his answer was, well, I think the rational part of Paul's brain doesn't believe in ghosts, but there's a part of him that does. And I guess that's probably true. Although I think that the rational part of my brain is engaged a little more than you might think in the topic of ghostery. What was the last movie you saw it in IMAX? It was Blade Runner 2049. It was the last IMAX movie I saw many, many years ago. Nice, me too. I don't believe in ghosts, but I would love a paranormal experience. I mean, that's the thing, is like there's this assumption that ghosts cannot exist within the framework of scientific reality, and I just don't buy that. No, I don't really have any stories myself of, something that I would say was clearly identifiable as like a run-in with a ghost. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something like that. Like, let's look at like this. This is how I think about ghosts. Do I think that ghosts exist as they are portrayed in popular culture? No. Do I think that ghosts are somehow the manifestation of the human soul or something staying behind after the body has died? No. Do I think that it's possible that there's something about reality that we don't understand that creates the phenomena? Yes. I think it's entirely possible. Ever wake up covered in ectoplasm? Yeah, I did a lot when I was a teenager. It's crazy. When I was a teenager, man, I'd wake up covered in electroplasm. Or ectoplasm or whatever. Yeah. But, like, think about this. Okay, so one of the things that TJ brought up, and this is something that, ghost hard ghost skeptics bring up, and I think it's a good point. You know, in all the stories that people tell, why are ghosts wearing clothes? And if you think about it from a pure standpoint of like, okay, this is, you know, your great grandma's ghost or something coming back, why is she wearing the dress that she always wore or the shoes she always wore or whatever? I think if you think about it purely from that standpoint, it is a little ridiculous. But what about like the observer effect, right? So I'm no quantum physicist, but this is a, you know, a proven principle of quantum physics that at the quantum level, particles act according to people's expectations of them. So there's an experiment that's done where they will shine a light through a tiny little hole against the wall in a controlled environment, and it'll create a pattern on the wall as you would expect. And then while people are watching, they let one photon at a time into the room, and for reasons that I don't think scientists understand, I don't think anybody understands, the photons will create the same pattern on the wall, the pattern that's expected by the observers. And so your expectations of interaction affect things on the quantum level, right? Okay. See, if you take something like the observer effect and you extrapolate it out, what if ghosts are dressed because you see them in what you expect them to be in? What if ghosts are dressed in a way that you as the observer would expect them to be dressed? And so they may not look the same to another observer. They may not appear at all to another observer. You know, I don't understand why ghosts, as we call them, couldn't be proven down the line as some sort of natural phenomenon of quantum physics or the multiverse. Like, what if the nature of the multiverse is that these universes sometimes intersect and bleed into one another? And what if what people are seeing when they think they're seeing ghosts is just based on the observer effect? There's an underlying expectation that is driving some sort of bleed through in the multiverse. Now, once again, I'm no scientist, but these are the types of things that I think are possible, if not probable, and that may account for the widespread and constant reports of paranormal encounters in human beings. Maybe it's something entirely natural that they're seeing. Who knows? You might be describing hallucinations. Well, I mean, the edges of what a hallucination is have been blurred by quantum physics, as I just explained. The fact that quantum particles react in a manner that is based, at least in part, on the expectation of the viewer. Since when did your expectation have an effect on actual reality? Well, at the quantum level, it does. So it seems to me that, I don't know, there might be a whole host of things that we don't understand about reality. And so that these experiences that we describe now as paranormal might not be paranormal at all. They might be normal. That might just be a very strange and complex part of what we consider to be reality. If we ended up proving the phenomenon in that way, though, it would be an explanation that doesn't line up with the conception of ghosts that we have now. Well, sure, yeah. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, do I believe in ghosts in the traditional way that they're presented in folklore and word of mouth stories and movies and music and all of that as the remnant of a dead person in the world of the living? No. Do I allot for the fact that, like I said before, that there might be an interconnectedness in the multiverse that allows different parts of the multiverse to bleed through into this reality, maybe even sometimes due to the expectation of the viewer? Do I think that something like that may be possible? Sure. Probable? Probably not. You know, like I said, I'm not claiming to be some kind of scientist or something, and I'm not claiming to understand in the least more than just a cursory explanation of the observer effect. I definitely can see we have a tenuous grasp on reality at best. That's one of those things that, like, I doff my hat to you for admitting it, because I think a lot of people think that we're living at the end of science. I think a lot of people think that the scientific model of reality is like 99.999% complete, and that human beings have, a basic grounded knowledge in how reality works. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that human beings, might have figured out some of the systems in a way that allows them to be predictable. But when it comes to, like, what is the nature of reality, if you could have that explained to you in a way that you could understand by some sort of, alien being or interdimensional entity or some shit, if you could be sat down and explained to this thing, do I think that it would resemble in the least bit our current conception of reality? No, I think that there's a whole ocean of information that we just don't have. And I think that maybe we've gotten good at predicting the output of that system. We've gotten good at clocking the phenomena within it mathematically and scientifically so that we can test it and repeat it. But do I think that that's where it stops? Do I think that we've reached the end of knowledge? No. In fact, I think that, there were probably a lot of people that felt that way in the 1800s, when they were still putting leeches on people and, So I think that, 1,000 years from now, humanity will have a very different conception of the fabric of reality than it does now. And I allow for things that we consider to be paranormal experiences to maybe be charted along that. I'm not saying that they're real. I'm not saying that they're ghosts or souls or whatever. I'm saying that there may be some experiences that human beings have that have to do with quantum strangeness and quantum entanglement and multiverse that can't be explained by the physical model of reality. And I think that, my evidence for that would be the field of quantum physics, where one of the hallmarks of quantum physics, if you read even a cursory explanation of it, is that a lot of its presuppositions fly in the face of the physical model of the universe. It seems that at the quantum level, the universe doesn't adhere to its own principles. That's why you have things like quantum entanglement, where if two quantum particles are linked they can, whatever happens to one happens to the other no matter where they are. So you could take a quantum particle that was linked with another, keep one of them here in a jar, and send one of them to the end of the fucking universe and beyond. And whatever you do to that quantum particle that's linked will instantaneously affect the other particle. So why is that quote unquote impossible under the physical model? Well, for one thing, it breaks the law of relativity. It breaks, the speed of light, which is supposed to be the hard speed limit of physical reality. It's information being transferred at faster than light rates. And that's actually one of the tenets of futurism and Scientology, is this idea that human beings will be able to use that principle in order to communicate with other human beings across vast oceans of time and space. So in a far future, scenario where humanity has spread out across the Milky Way, and maybe even beyond it, that principle of quantum entanglement is likely going to be the basis of what is used to communicate with those people. And so that's just one, actual scientifically backed example of the very foundations of reality, at the quantum level, not following the rules of the rest of reality, which means that the rules of the rest of reality are improperly observed. It would mean that we don't really know as much as we think we know.
A lot of our knowledge is based on what we know about all these rules of physics.
Well, yeah,
We've never been inside the sun, but we can imagine what the conditions of the sun would have to be.
Well, not only imagine it, we've got it down to basically, as we understand the physical reaction, as we can recreate it, we know what's going on inside the sun. Mm-hmm. Do we know exactly? Have we sent a probe in there? Have we physically observed it? No. Mm-hmm. But we understand the fusion reaction. We understand the kind of great amount of pressure that's involved in an object as big as that. Deep, come here. It's like a gym session for the mind. Well, this is where I try to live as a person. I think it gets me kind of painted as a dude that's out there, in my opinions, and I'm happy to be that. I feel like just on a base level, it is far more entertaining for me as a human being who really has no ability to affect any of the things that I'm talking about, to allot for things that I don't understand, than to adhere stodgily and stoically to this physical model of the universe. Dinor's cold as a cucumber. But,
leave that other doggy alone.
Yeah, you leave that dog alone if you're going to be out here. The idea that light contains not just energy but information is fascinating. If we can see stars as they were, how must Earth look from up there? Right. Well, I mean, it's just, I believe, and I honestly believe this, I believe that human beings have a good working understanding of the basics of being a human being and the things that could affect you. If you fall down, it's going to hurt. Why? Because of gravity and the biological makeup of your body, which we've mapped and explored, and you know what I mean? Like, you do damage to internal organs or bones or tendons. When it's cold outside, you have to bundle up. If you don't, your body's going to leach too much heat into the environment and you're going to die. If it's hot outside, you have to get indoors to a certain degree if it's hot to a certain degree. You know, these types of physical principles, I think, are testable, repeatable. I don't question any of that. But I think that that is one perspective on what is increasingly revealed by science to be a multi-layered component of rules and regulations that govern everything in the background that makes that physical experience that I'm talking about possible. And I think that it's there in those details that you may find, with time and exploration and human ingenuity, explanations for some things that are now just dismissed as fantasy. So, you know, another thing where I feel like I'm, you know, a little maybe out there in my opinion is aliens, right? I believe, and you know, I would stand on this without a shadow of a doubt, that aliens have quote unquote visited this planet. Now, what I mean by visited may not include like landing a big ship here. It may not mean that people that think that they're abducted are telling the truth, that they're sending, you know, ships here to abduct people and stuff like that. But in my mind, it means that we are at the very least being observed and are capable of being influenced by entities that are intelligent and outside of our own species. And I believe that simply because of the astronomical amount of Earth-like life-supporting planets that we know to exist in the universe. As we've gotten better at peering farther and farther out into the cosmos, we just keep finding and cataloging these Goldilocks zone type of planets that would support our type of biological life. And that's assuming that biological life as we experience it here is the most abundant type of life in the universe. That could be completely and utterly, like, carbon-based life might be rarer than, you know, a dominant form of life. And so to me, the extraordinary claim is, yes, there are billions of stars and trillions upon trillions, maybe even quadrillions of planets, among which billions and billions then are going to be habitable by life like ours. That I think it's the extraordinary claim to say that we're the only living things that are examining any of this from the inside out. And if that's true, right, there's a number of presuppositions that I think you can make that I think are defensible philosophically. That, okay, we know that our technology is exponentially increasing and that we're doing things now that would be akin to magic just a couple of 100 years ago. And if there are billions of other societies out there, billions of other collections of life, that we're probably somewhere near the median or the low end of technology. There are going to be a certain amount of these types of civilizations, if you want to call them that, that are below us on the totem pole, and there's going to be a certain amount that are way above us. And so that allots for technology affecting the fabric of reality, which once again is another way that I think some of these experiences could be explained in other than just a mass repeating delusion. Because that's what ghosts are. If you really look at it from a scientific and psychological perspective, as we understand physical reality, ghosts are a mass human delusion. Like a meme. Like a Richard Dawkins meme, not, you know, a Wojak. You know, just an idea that has spread throughout cultures and across oceans. And because, you know, like this idea that there is some sort of presence after a human being dies. You know, like there's a modern conception of ghosts, but in humanity, that idea predates history. It predates written language. So there was this period of time in Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia and the Near East and the Levant, where there was this thing called the cult of the skull, which was shared across wide distances and across many different types of proto-civilization, where we find these burial pits where human skulls have been collected after the body decomposed, decorated, sometimes with, like clay, sometimes with the adornment of shiny rocks, drawings and chalk and all of this. And then they are placed back in their burial pit. And this was a widespread, this wasn't just like one little tribe of human beings doing this. This was a significant portion of humanity at the time that I'm talking about. Like, I think it's like 6,000 BC. And it wasn't really long after that. You start going forward to like 3,000 BC or 2,000 BC, and you start to see even these more sophisticated forms of venerating the dead, and a lot of it seems to be based on this idea that the dead continue. And so you see in cities like you see they have these things called the burial pits that they've excavated in where they basically dug a pit, a big one, and then they built rooms in it. And at the very bottom would be the corpse and its very favorite things. And then the next level up, it would be filled with servants that were sacrificed to protect this person in the afterlife, and all of the accoutrement that soldiers and attendants would need. A bunch of people were killed, stacked on top of that. Then on top of the next, you'd have food stores. And all of this was built with a drain in the center of it so that people could come and pour libations into the hole, and it would drain down and drip into the bottommost chamber. So it was like they were feeding the dead, right? And so this idea of ghosts and something persisting after we die is not new to us. It's not a modern contrivance. It's not the invention of horror writers and storytellers and stuff like that. At least not in the way that we would conceive it being a modern invention. What's libation? Like drinks, like mead or alcohol or honey milk or whatever the fuck, that's a libation. Potables, potent potables. The dead carry a lot of weight, not just 6 feet of dirt, but everything we project onto them, sure. But we also know that our intentions projected can affect reality. You starting to see where I'm coming from? You may not agree, but that's where my mind lives on the subject of ghosts and paranormal stuff that is adjacent to ghosts, entities, and this type of thing appearing to people. There's so many gaps in our knowledge of human history prior to the codification and invention of written record. And it's so fascinating what we do know. It just makes you want to experience it, to like be able to like send somebody back as an observer and have them catalog everything. Because it's nuts, man.
They did something interesting recently where they found a way to look back at the history of DNA going back hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
based on like a certain number of mutations that stay in the DNA record.
Sure.
They found that men have universally through all of human history always been a little older than women. They became fathers older than women became
yeah.
mothers.
Yeah.
Just based on little
telomeres or whatever.
Yeah, little defects in the genetic record and how those accumulate through your lifetime.
It's just absurd. The amount that we don't know, even about our own origins and history, is staggering. And to say with hubris that the physical model of the universe, as it's described in modern science, is the end-all be-all of reality, I think there's a lot of hubris involved in that. Because there's just so much that we don't understand and don't know about how some of the systems that still are the most powerful systems in human life today, governance, the distribution of power, war, religion, all of these things continue to be huge influencers on every little thing that we do as human beings. But the origins of them are shrouded in mist. Like we have nothing but inferences and incomplete historical records of these dead religions and dead systems of power and dead systems of veneration and dead systems of belief about the physical world. We just don't, we can't, there's a huge glaring gap in our ability to know this.
But yeah, like that DNA thing I mentioned, that's the closest we can get to like really looking back in time. But only so many things are affected by DNA, or so many things affect our DNA.
Right.
Yeah.
There are a lot of certain myths and imagery that are found in a lot of old human civs that had no contact, things like the afterlife, dragons, mermaids, etc. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that supports a theory that human beings had more, like these ancient civilizations had more contact than we thought. That perhaps there were civilizations that came before these ancient civilizations that had mastered the ability to travel across the oceans and had cultural interplay with these other places, which is why you see the form of the pyramid, you know, being venerated all over the world in cultures that had absolutely no contact with one another and at different, you know, oceans of time apart. I think it's possible. I think it's incredibly possible. You know, one of the crazy things is in these ancient civilizations that we're talking about. We're talking about like the Maya, the Aztec, the Olmec, the Toltec, the ancient Egyptians, these Levant civilizations that I was talking about, Ur and Uruk. These kind of city states that I was talking about, where very little is known. There seemed to be the idea that the beings that were venerated within their religion came from the stars. They came from outside of our planet to our planet to lift us up out of savagery and to teach us how to make things and fabricate things and control things. And, you know, it may be represented differently within the rules and characters of these religions, but there's a lot of parallels between these ancient religions that, if you know, believe that the current model of history is 100% correct, had no interaction, could not have had any interaction. You know, their histories predate the ability for traversing an ocean. So, you know, there are these kind of like big question mark type of archaeological sites where archaeologists will discover this site. Like there was one I remember. I think it's in Thailand. If it's not, it's in Southeast Asia, and it's this kind of plateau pyramid that was discovered in the jungle, and was assumed before it was really examined scientifically to be a ritual site or something from a certain period of time. And when they got there, they found that everything there was fabricated way before they assumed that this was, maybe even a pre-Neolithic type of ritual site. But they could not account for the technology. They could not account for how did they get all these stones up to the top of this mountain to create this plateau. It doesn't make sense. With donkey power and shit, it would take 1 million fucking years. And that's assuming that this, was made at a time, because a lot of times these things were made at a time before we think the domestication of the animal happened. It's like, okay, I just forget the past and try and change our future. I mean, I think that's stupid. I don't think you can know where you're going unless you know where you've been. Like, does that not inform your course? And I'm telling you, man, our knowledge is woefully underwhelming when it comes to the foundations of who and what we are. I mean, yeah, like you said, pyramids having celestial alignments blows your mind. I mean, that's one of the things that people just, kind of take for granted about these ancient civilizations, is that they had a sophisticated knowledge of astronomy. Like, they were correctly predicting astronomical phenomenon and shit that it took us, hundreds of thousands of years to come to the final scientific measurement of. They were doing this stuff far before the invention of the the scientific methods that allow us to describe it today. But without any of our technology, no computers, with no lenses, and so it's just astonishing.
It almost seems like in the past we made things that are like almost impossibly large, like just these huge monoliths that we can barely understand. But now in the future we were making things impossibly small, like putting more and more power into tinier and tinier things,
packing more and more people into a smaller patch of land, building up, and so no, it's true. I mean, slave labor doesn't account for it, because it's just like you can throw an army of people in a big giant fucking 200-ton granite block, and without leverage and more modern technology like wheels and braces and machinery, you're not going to get that fucking thing to the top of a pyramid. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of people that say, oh, they built a ramp to build the pyramid. That ramp would have had to be like 30 miles long in order to have the grade that would have been needed to do the pyramids the way that they, people say that they did them, with slaves, dragging them with ropes and stuff. There's just absolutely no way you could generate enough lifting force to take it up a ramp that would, be buildable. You'd have to have an absurdly long, perfectly graded 13-mile long ramp to get to the top of this fucking thing. It doesn't make sense. There are ancient Egyptian artifacts that, like carvings, that are so intricate that, according to what we understand, they're impossible to do by hand. There are things like perfect holes being bored into granite and shit that we're like, how did they do this without machinery? And nobody can come up with an answer for it. Intricately carved artifacts that, if we were to try and recreate them in the modern day, a whole host of technology would need to be used. So, there's just all kinds of gaps in what we understand. And while I understand the danger of assuming and filling those gaps with whimsy and fantasy and shit, I do think that you need to allot, at least I feel like I need to, as a thinking person, a lot for there being a whole ocean of things that we don't understand, and that maybe those things that we don't understand appear to us as supernatural event. Like, to me, that seems to be plausible. Or was the archaeologist site you were mentioning earlier located? It was, I can't remember exactly where it was. It's somewhere in Southeast Asia. I want to say it was like Malaysia or Thailand or Vietnam, something like that. Oh, God damn it. Oh, stupid back. My back is fucked. I was telling Amelia, I definitely have some kind of like damage in one spot in my back. The lower left part of my back, it just goes out like this too often for there not to be some kind of problem there. Fart for you? No. You fart for you. Being over 40 is rough. Tell me about it. Why was Dreyfus such a good band to see live? Just energy, man. Just I really like, it's funny to me that they didn't go anywhere. That I know that there was like band drama or whatever that ended up breaking up Dreyfus. But for those of you that don't know, Dreyfus was a local band that I saw at a club in San Luis Obispo, California in my 20s that was just like blew me away. Still the best band I've ever seen live. And the venue was shitty and small, and it just felt like we were seeing a band that had a trajectory that they were going to be real fucking big. And I don't think I've ever really felt that way about a local band to that extent. I just remember seeing them play. The energy and skill with which they played and the structure of their songs was so pleasing and aggressive. And it was right at the time when nu metal was starting to assert itself, and just a very aggressive kind of music. And they played it with aplomb, man. They played it with passion and skill and craftsmanship. And they were entertainers and musicians, they just, I don't know, they had that crowd in a fucking frenzy, man. I've never seen a local band have people reacting like that. And, yeah, definitely the only time I've seen a band that wasn't signed and felt like these dudes are gonna be fucking multi-millionaires. There's no way that this music is gonna fucking, but it did, you know. I mean, the band just a few months after I saw them live broke up, and there was, you know, back in the day, it was, you know, less easy to find a digital footprint of these guys on the internet. You know, it wasn't common for people to have, you know, their own websites and shit yet, and even if it was, they didn't. And so you kind of had to get drips and drabs from people, just like word of mouth, like what happened to Dreyfus. Oh, you know, they had a fight or whatever, and the drama, and they broke up, and the lead singer has this project now, and the lead guitarist has this project with the drummer, and blah blah blah. But they never, you know, you just never really heard about them. It's Dreyfus, like Richard Dreyfuss's last name, not Dryfist. But yeah, and to this day, I have not been able to locate my copy of their CD that I bought that night. As far as I know, there was a time when my CDs were taken out of my car, and I almost wonder, you know what I mean? I don't even remember what I lost in that. You know, I had back in the day, it was pretty common for people to carry like I had this little zip up book of CDs, and I lost a ton of music. My car got robbed at a party by dudes that were at the party, which was even better. That was just a crazy night. I ended up going to this like party with a bunch of college kids that I knew, and well, I was a college kid too, so I guess that makes sense. But they went to Fresno State, and I was going to Fresno City at the time, and I pulled my car up outside and parked it, and I had a big speaker system in the back of my car, a nice aftermarket stereo with amp and two big subwoofers, and you know, my car had Beats, and these like Asian gang members showed up at the party, and you know, everybody was like, what the fuck are they doing here? Because they were just clearly and openly like not there because they were students and shit, and they were all, you know, sporting gang memorabilia and shit like that, and those guys ransacked my car, basically, just like broke out the back window, took everything out of it, took my CDs. But they did it while a few of the guys were inside, and I think that was part of the deal. They went inside, like they had a couple of guys go inside so that the whole party would be like, who the fuck are these dudes? And nobody's, you know, watching outside. And they just scooped me.
And just lookouts too.
Bastards. Yeah. Yeah, the area I grew up in has a lot of Asian gangs, in addition to like Hispanic gangs and black gangs and white gangs, for that matter. The Yakuza showed up. I mean, it's more like Asians have their own sets of like Crip and Blood. So, you know, like some Asian Crips. Thank gosh they only stole from you. Yeah, I don't think they were there to, you know, get a murder beef or whatever. They just wanted to. I think a couple of other cars were broken into that night as well, like up and down the block. So they knocked us dead, basically. I grew up near you, Paul. My best friend was Laosha, and your theft story definitely familiar to me. I mean, you know. What are your thoughts on non-black minorities who use the soft R N-word? I don't know, man. The politics of that word are a little bit inscrutable for me as a dude that's outside of, minority racial experience in this country. Um, I think that a lot of people that aren't black that you see using that type of language grew up around people who were using it. Like, it's a very culturally informed type of language, and I don't think it, like, honestly, I don't think it's up to me to decide who can and can't say it. I don't think it's up to anybody really who can and can't say it, but when it comes to like the social acceptability of it, I think that it's a case-by-case basis in a lot of instances, and it's something that's really not my purview, not my thing. I mean, I've talked about it before. I grew up as a white kid using that word like it was punctuation. Like, if you were to listen to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old Paul, you hear a lot of N-bombs. Not out of hatred or, any kind of, like, malicious, racist intent. It was just, like, it was used as a greeting. It was used in a lot of the music that we listened to. It was, it was normalized in my group of friends to use that type of language. And it wasn't just us. We weren't like the lone group of kids doing it, it was everywhere. And as old as I am, it wasn't that long ago. So.
Language is just a very fluid thing.
Always has been. That which is inappropriate today might be widespread and appropriate tomorrow.
Or vice versa. Like, pretty much every insult used to be, like, medical terminology for someone.
Right. Retarded, moron, idiot. These are all, like, archaic psychological explanations for mental deficiency. Mm-hmm. And then those things were kind of adopted by the wider populace as an insult, and now they're kind of, seeing a movement against their use. Mm-hmm. But, in my day, your fucking teachers would call you retards. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They may not be like, you're a fucking retard, but they might, why are you guys acting retarded? That would not be remiss to hear out of the mouth of a teacher or an authority figure. And so that's the plasticity of language.
I found out the other day that cretin is one of those too. Like,
Cretin.
It used to refer specifically to people with iodine deficiency hypothyroidism that would be shorter and have lower intelligence.
Oh, I see.
That's why we have iodized salt.
Yep. Autistic will probably be one of those words. I mean, I don't know. You've already seen use of the descriptor autistic diminish, and it's been replaced by autism spectrum disorder. ASD is what it's called now, just because the understanding of it is different. The understanding of it as a psychological phenomenon is more well understood now than it was 10 years ago or 15, 20 years ago.
I'm kind of not a fan of, like, the big umbrella they've been trying to introduce of just neurodivergent. I feel like that's encapsulating too many things.
I mean, yeah, encapsulating a lot of different experiences and different struggles, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't necessarily have a problem with the term, but I do think that it is too broad to be used in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. New pejoratives are always being created, like boomer. Mm-hmm. That's in the last 15 years or so. The term boomer derived from baby boomer, which is my parents' generation. You know what I mean? Has become a pejorative.
And detached from its original meaning.
Yeah.
Like, you're not just saying boomer to that specific age group.
Right. Somebody that is like me, I'm a Gen X millennial cusper, and I'm called a boomer all the time. It's just now it just means you have an old-fashioned way of thinking or old-fashioned expectations, or you enjoy something that is kind of passé and old-fashioned. You've got an opinion on something that doesn't really that shows that you're kind of out of touch with the current culture or whatever the fuck. That's a boomer now. So yeah, I mean, I don't have to think that new pejoratives are being creative. I've witnessed it. You have too. It's a constant thing. Toxic. That's another, pejorative term that has emerged with its specific meaning in the last 15, 20 years. Everybody using that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's part of the modern colloquial conversation now. If you at all engage with people or engage with the media in any way, you know what toxic means, even though toxic, like neurodivergent, is an incredibly broad descriptor for a lot of different types of behavior. Toxic could mean alcoholic. Toxic could mean narcissistic. Toxic could mean sociopathic. Toxic could mean somebody with an anger problem. Toxic, it's all of these things encompassed.
Yeah, I almost want, it seems like we've gotten to this point now where, every relationship is being hyper scrutinized for, some semblance of abuse or power dynamic imbalance in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that is due to the fact that these types of dynamics and relationships are only now becoming okay to talk about. The types of extreme, dynamic injustices that have typified human relationships. A lot of times women end up subjected entirely. And I think that as a rebound of that, because we live in a time, and this is a good thing, I think, overall, we live in a time where it's not wrong to say that you have a mental illness, or at the very least, it's more widely recognized and accepted as a legitimate, disease, rather than you just being a weirdo. That's what we called people that were neurodivergent when I was a kid. Retarded or weirdos or freaks or geeks or spazzes. Yeah. Spaz was, I kind of missed spaz, but only just. And I think that's always kind of been the case. And we live at a time now where I think, to our credit, we're starting to, as a society, at the very least, recognize that these struggles are horrible. That I think that there's a community of people now that can form that all suffer from this. And that has kind of asserted a sense of respect in society. Now, has it gone a little crazy and far? Sure. I think that with this newfound acceptance of mental illness as just a normal part of human existence, has come a wave of self-diagnosis and kind of boutique diagnosis where it's like, I want to be special, and so I'm this.
Or excusing every bit of their toxic behaviors as part of some disease.
Right.
I do this because I'm this. I do this because I'm that.
Right. And I think that a lot of times is because of, I think that the real villain there is self-diagnosis. Because I think it allows people
to and a lot of times disguise just shitty self-serving behavior behind this blanket mental health excuse with no diagnosis and no treatment. You know what I mean? It's that to me is, I think, the worst part of it. But I think that as people come to understand and accept it more, the idea of self-diagnosis is it's already under fire. It's something that a lot of mental health advocates, myself included, just are vehemently against, and for good reason. You know, you don't have the expertise. Now, that's not saying that you as a person, maybe you can't afford mental health help. That's not saying that you can't take a look at your symptoms and compare them against the symptoms of different disorders and look to the resources around those disorders for answers. And I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. I think going forward with the label of I'm, DID, that one, I think there are probably like 1 million people in the world that would say that they're DID, and there's probably like 30,000 people that are.
Well, it's because the reason why diagnosis is so difficult is because they have so many overlapping symptoms. It's like trying to diagnose yourself on WebMD. Like with mental illness, there's a dozen things that can be shared across 100 different disorders.
Right. And a part of mental illness can be an inability to properly recognize a symptom as a symptom. There are a lot of people that are mentally ill that are just operating under a dysfunctional sense of what's normal in their lives. And so, that's why self-diagnosis as a general practice is to be discouraged. Like I said, using the resources that are there, I have this collection of symptoms that, I can attest to. And here are the types of mental disorders that typify those symptoms. And here are some of the treatment plans for those. And maybe I can try and meditate, or maybe I can try and exercise, or whatever. I don't think there's any harm in that. In fact, I think that's one of the positive things about our current kind of newfound acceptance of neurodivergence. But I just think it's dangerous when you take it as a label.
Yeah, and throw your chest out like, I represent this. Because I think with like autism specifically, it's like, because it is a spectrum, there's a lot of people that are being talked over by these self-diagnosed autistics, like people that are lower functioning, they have higher support needs.
Yeah. I mean, just look at like how some of these terms have already been trivialized, and this is the end result of self-diagnosis. OCD doesn't mean obsessive compulsive disorder anymore. It means I'm quirky.
Yeah.
It means every once in a while I worry if I turned the oven off or not when I leave the house. So it's my OCD.
Or I like color coding.
Yeah. Or I enjoy taking chaos and making order out of it. That's just my OCD. Or I'm turned off by geometric anomalies, like things that are lopsided.
Yeah.
That's my OCD. And it's just like, no. Obsessive compulsive disorder is typified by the creation of ritual.
And more importantly, like the anxiety if it's not fulfilled.
Right.
Like there's a difference between it something rubbing you the wrong way and you thinking that something horrible is going to happen if you don't fix it.
You being skeeved out by, an isosceles triangle or whatever the fuck is not OCD. OCD is the development of these kind of self-defeating and from the outside looking in, pointless rituals. Things like counting to a certain amount of numbers over and over in your head, or grooming yourself in a specific way repetitively, or preparing something in your house over and over again repetitively until it's perfect. As Amelia said, the underlying anxiety when you try and deny yourself the fulfillment of it. And so your life starts to be taken over by these meaningless rituals because your brain can't handle the idea of not, it's just, that's the disorder. It's not, I see a color, I just hate that color yellow. Every time I see that color yellow, it skeeves me out. It's my OCD. So it's like, no, it's not.
don't know if you paid any attention. There was this weird trend on TikTok for a while where there was like a lot of people faking Tourette's.
Oh yeah. There was that Ticks and Roses, I think was her name, was the big one that got busted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be an upside and a downside to everything.
Mm-hmm.
I
said
think
it's a rebound. And
yeah, this is a result of these types of things, like support networks growing for people who actually suffer from these things, and it leaves, there are people out there that will pretend to be something in order to get that same level of support. And I don't know. The only real way to combat that is to just increase people's knowledge and to very much instill in people this idea that self-diagnosis is silly and pointless. And I do think that, like, when people that don't have a disorder go put on a performance like they do, I think that it undercuts the goodwill that people feel towards people with that disorder when they find out that this person was a fraud. And so I feel like they do demonstrable damage to people who are already suffering from these things, and just now in human history getting recognition that these things exist and that they're widespread. So yeah. You guys are perfectly describing Reddit, especially the diagnosing of abuse in relationships. I mean, that is crazy to me, that there are people out there, and you know what? I've probably engaged in some smaller forms of this myself. It's just so widespread. This idea that, like, you see one negative interaction between two people, and all of a sudden you infer their power dynamic. You infer the dysfunction of their relationship, like you're living with them 24/7, and it's just ridiculous. No observation, oftentimes without even talking to either one of the people to understand either perspective. There's just this immediate diagnosis of an unbalanced power dynamic or an abusive relationship or whatever the fuck. And people just don't understand.
Yeah, it's like, don't go to relationship advice unless you want 20 people to tell you to divorce immediately.
Yeah. I would go a step further and say that people who have these disorders actually need to learn how to live with them and not use their disorders as an excuse. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, having the disorder does not, like, in fact, knowing that you have the disorder almost increases the onus on you to not export negativity and to not use your mental illness as an excuse for bad behavior and for self-serving and shitty and behavior. Yeah, no. Of course, the idea of supporting people in their mental health is to hopefully that they will at some point reach a sense of equilibrium in their lives. Maybe they're not cured in a traditional sense, but they've learned coping mechanisms that help them, lead a decent existence. And excusing every bad piece of behavior that you have, with your mental illness is not conducive to that. It's interesting how many people are keen and eager to use their mental illness as both a sword and a shield simultaneously. Sure.
But I mean, overall, I don't think it's like as big of a problem. I think social media amplifies things like it always does. The most extremes.
Oh, of course, yeah. That's why I say that it still overall is a good thing. That people are more aware of these common human struggles. Because ultimately, not to sound like a hippie, we're all, sharing this little ball of rock together. And we're all brothers and sisters in the end. We all got to share this. This is all of our home. And common human experience should matter. Call me a hippie. Yes, ultimately I am. It's kind of funny. I really wouldn't think to apply that to myself, to explain to people seriously any of my philosophy, but I do think I'm heavily influenced by the hippie movement.
Yeah. I'd say the only thing that really doesn't apply is like the whole social thing. You don't have a hippie commune.
True.
You're not seeing a guru or being a guru.
There's a part of me that really wants that, though.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Just somebody to, like, tell me, like, here's how you get your shit in order. Do these yoga poses. Paul the Hermit hippie. Okay. Can I ask an off-topic question? Yeah. Go for it. I may not answer it if it's less interesting to me than the natural flow of conversation, but yeah, you can ask. Crazy how hippie is still considered mostly cool. It's really held up as a social brand. Sure. Is the Paul cult still on? That's still my retirement. My retirement plan is start a cult. You know, live my twilight years as a cult leader, and what are they going to do? Once I'm gone, what can they take? Do you know any specific beatniks or hippies that you've liked or influenced you? My parents. My parents are both products of the hippie generation. And their kind of worldviews were probably, I mean, like, this is true of most people. You know, your parents' worldviews are some of the most foundational things to your personal worldview. Whether you end up sharing that worldview with them or not, they influenced you in one direction or the other. And so, yeah, my parents and my aunts and uncles, meaning my extended union family growing up, had a profound effect on the way I look at things. And all of them were from that generation. You know, all of them were from the beatnik generation, the hippie generation. So that would explain the origin of that part of my worldview for sure, I think.
You think you would have liked like the full-on flower child's upbringing, like being in a van?
Like, yeah, being named Moon Unit or whatever. No, probably not. But you know, it really, like, the kind of culture of hippie gatherings left less of an indelible mark on that generation than the philosophy of acceptance and love and understanding and peace, which is, you know, to me, what really is that's the relic of the hippie generation, is this idea of almost idealism when it comes to human interaction. That there is an ideal and that we could achieve it if we really wanted to. Harmony and understanding, sympathy and joy abounding. The age of Aquarius, man. I grew up listening to a lot of that music. The first music, you know, that I was exposed to that really had a profound effect on me was like it was two types of music. It was jazz, which is a whole extension of this. Jazz is part of the lineage of the hippie generation, because jazz was this music that was not meant to be exclusive. It was, you know, this music of the people, and it gathered rather than repelling. It wasn't like an exclusive club. It was for everybody, and that to me is, you know, a core principle in harmony and understanding, and peace and love, and all of that fun stuff. And so jazz music and, you know, 60s rock and roll was the foundation of my musical interest as a kid. You know, Age of Aquarius was a song that I would play over and over and over again as a kid. The Mamas and the Papas, I would play California Dreamin' constantly. I mean, that song was hypnotic to me. I can't remember who sings it, but there's this song called Summer in the City from the 60s that I was just fucking enamored. Like that was one of the first songs I remember being obsessed with. You know, there's just these little flashes of philosophical information in those things that kind of like woke up my young mind. It definitely prepared me to consume the type of music that would become popular once, you know, I was in my teens and 20s. Is all your family religious growing up, or did that happen later? They're more religious now in terms of observance than they were when I grew up. But they were always baseline religious. They were lapsed Protestants, basically. Like Protestants in belief, but not in ritual. So I didn't go to church a whole lot when I was a kid. We did go, but it was a once in a blue moon event. I was in Sunday school when I was little, but it was basically just because my parents worked shift work and needed a place to send us before we were in school. So it wasn't out of any desire to groom me to a religious education or whatever. So yeah, pretty much like your typical lapsed Protestant family. And now a good portion of my family is incredibly evangelical, observant Christian. I'm kind of one of a couple of black sheep in the family who aren't that way. Damn, summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirt and gritty. Cool cat looking for a kitty, doesn't seem to be a shadow in the city. Great song. What do you think caused the change in your family's religious position? An interloper. Truly, that's how it started. My sister married an incredibly profoundly evangelical religious person. She converted. And then over the course of about 15 years, a lot of the rest of my family converted. And it was the introduction of that one dude, that one line of thought spread like a virus and took a lapsed Protestant family with a kind of middling belief in God and the Bible to at church 3 times a week. The whole social life is, revolves around the church. What you would expect from a pretty hardcore, observant, evangelical family. How do you like that? Just found out that 15 minutes away from me is where James Cameron grew up. I had no idea. I found out by seeing it on a sign entering the town. Cool. Neat. Neato burrito. I was like most Christians in name only, and then even then almost exclusively on Sunday. Yeah. Oh, I was even farther away from that ideal. We never went like regularly to church things. Every once in a while we would go to like some kind of like public church function. My mom had a church that she had attended when she was younger, and we were still in the same area that she grew up, and so we would go to that church for like Easter dinner or whatever, some kind of like festival or whatever. But I would say like 2, maybe 3 times a year, at most, when I was younger, did we go to church. And as soon as I was old enough to say I didn't want to go, it just never came up again. Like my parents, were cool in that way, because they did not force attendance of those things on me. It's like I said, as soon as I was old enough to have a preference as to whether or not we went here or there, I just was not a church person. Ooh, hold on. Ooh, I'll be right back. Son of a bitch. Falling apart at the seams. Dad sounds, yeah, I know. I'm always grunting and groaning. Yeah, I'm pretty fucked up right now. My back has been horrible. And over the last couple of days, re-injured some sort of old injury, re-inflamed some sort of problem. It's always in that same region. Lower left of my lumbar spine. I think that's what it is. Something wrong back there. Still token these days? Yeah. Advice for younger people with back issues? No, I mean I've had them since I was in middle school. I was born with scoliosis, and so even before I had a weight problem, I had back problems. Lidocaine shots, dude, that's a scary procedure, bro. I had it done once, and it felt like a whole ass thing. They had to put me under general anesthesia and shit. It's like, because you can't twitch, you know what I mean? They're like putting a needle in your spinal cord or near your spinal cord, so they have to put you out. It's like, no. So yeah, I got that done once. The reason I haven't gotten it done again is because, quite honestly, it was of limited help. I think it helped temporarily, but it didn't repair any of the damage. It didn't stop it from coming back, and I don't know how tenable it would be for me to get that type of thing constantly. Don't take opiates. Trust me, I learned that lesson the hard way in my 20s. There's no need for me to relearn that lesson. I've solidified the fact that opiates are not the answer. Lord Flanus, dude. Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, and how do you do? You dodged the creation of fentanyl too. Yeah. Well, I never. Yeah. I guess fentanyl. You're right. I did. Yeah. The big one when I was into opiates was OxyContin and oxycodone and roxycodone. So yeah. I had my dance with that shit and learned pretty quickly that it's not where you want to be. Your opinion on Tarantino? I mean, that's a pretty broad question. I think Tarantino is pretty fucking brilliant. I think that he creates, and this is like, a lot of people would say that I'm dressing down his movies, but I think he creates some of the most watchable movies ever. Do I think that they ascend in every category to the same level of greatness as a Kubrick movie or, a Charlie Chaplin movie or whatever, a Lumiere brothers? I don't know. But I do know that they are just uniquely and uniformly fun to watch all the way through. And I think that that's one of the things that drives his creative process. And I think it shows in his movies. Like, he's less concerned, not that he's unconcerned with it, but I feel like if I could project some of my expectations onto Tarantino, I feel like that he cares less about the philosophical implication of his work and more about the entertainment value of it. I think that he is a movie watcher's movie maker. And I think that that's like high praise coming from the place that it's coming from me. I just think he's so skilled at framing and so skilled at dialogue and so skilled at conceptual, storytelling, that he just creates these really fun movies populated by these incredibly fun, over-the-top characters. And it's just, he's captured the essence of cool, like that's a huge part of his movie making, which I've always appreciated. You know what I mean? This sense of like, this is just in the movie because it's fucking cool. I can almost guarantee you that there are a number of things that are added to Tarantino's oeuvre for that very reason. Like, why does this happen in the movie? Like, here's one example of which there are many. You guys know in Pulp Fiction when Mia Wallace and Vincent Vega are sitting outside of Jackrabbit Slim's. They're about to go in and have dinner together, and he goes, "Oh man, can't we just go get a steak or something, man? This place looks fucking crazy." And she's like, "Oh, come on, you can get a steak in there." And she says, "Come on, don't be a square." And she just like makes the outline, and for whatever reason, he decided to put a little effect where it made the little square. You know what I mean? You guys remember this moment from the movie? There's really nothing like that in the rest of the movie. The movie is not typified by having like those types of edits in it, but he did that. Why? I'm pretty sure it was because it looked fucking cool. It's just like, man, it would be cool if she like made an actual square when she did that. Just put it in there. It doesn't matter. You know, and it's just a little tidbit. It's a little touch that, you know, it's definitely not one of the most remembered moments of the film, but it definitely overall affected the cool factor of the film for sure. Wes Anderson Bioshock. I don't know, bro. Maybe not. The foot shot compilation. Oh yeah. I mean, he's a big foot fetishist, and he just he puts a lot of feet in his movies. A lot of lady feet. You know, there's a lot of lady foot. I mean, he's openly like it's not even like a speculation. He's talked about his foot fetish, so he's talked about including those scenes because of it. You know, I think that's one of the things that makes his movies so watchable, is that there's like this sense of authenticity in them, where you know it's not a dude compromising his vision. It's a dude really putting on screen what he thinks is cool and what he thinks is sexy and what he thinks is fun and funny. You know, there's a lot of Tarantino in every bit of his oeuvre. You know, and I think that that's one of the reasons why people love his movies so much. There's just a sense of authenticity to the presentation and the dialogue. Just very, very much matches his personality, and you can tell that he can't help but put himself in these movies over and over, his own expectations and shit. Whereas I think a lot of movie makers are, you know, maybe less likely to indulge those types of whims in their desire to create a more generalized and consumable product, like you know, Spielberg. And I'm not trying to talk Spielberg down. He's a great director, but he would be an example of a director that I think, you know, maybe tamps his own desire to project himself heavily onto his work a lot of times. Hate that Marvel style dialogue is just in every kind of film. I mean, I don't know, man. This too shall pass. I was watching some old movies last night as I was sitting up, not able to sleep. And I ran across this movie that I'd forgotten existed from the early 2000s called Old School. And it's Luke Wilson and what's his fucking name? I forget his fucking name. I'm brain farting on his name, but that's pretty typical of me. Vince Vaughn is in it. Yeah, Vince Vaughn and fucking what's his name? He plays Frank the Tank in it. Anyway, I was just watching that movie and I was just like, yeah, Will Ferrell, yeah. And I was just watching. I was like, man, this type of humor came and fucking went, bro. Because that movie was huge. And I was watching it, and were parts of it still kind of funny to me? Sure. But was it anything like as funny as I think I remember it being when I, you know, saw it? No. I feel the same way about a lot of Judd Apatow movies. like Judd Apatow came along, and for a while the humor was just defined as this kind of like male-centric, puerile, hypersexual, you know what I mean, uncomfortably hypersexual type of humor, and the awkwardness of the male being was really examined in depth during the Apatow phase. And I don't know about you, but I go back and I watch most of those movies, and I'm just like, no, nah. You know what I mean? It just, there's always these little trends and stuff that people pick up on, and then they're just done to death. That formula for that old school movie, which basically the formula is Arrested Development. It's like dudes. Here's the basis of all of these. Dudes are getting older, man. They're not in their 20s anymore. They're in their early 30s, but they're not ready to grow up just yet. You know what I mean? So you've got like a ton of movies that fall under that, like that you could use that descriptor and people would guess. You've got old school. You've got what's that one with fucking Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn in it? Wedding Crashers. You've got all of the Judd Apatow movies. You know what I mean? Well, I guess the Judd Apatow movies are more about teenage angst. Yeah, Adam Sandler movies from that period were all that, of course. Yeah, that was that one, Best Friends or whatever, or I can't remember, but you know which one I'm talking about. It's got the shorter black comedian guy in it. I'm horrible with names, bro. Names just come and go. Superbad. Superbad is more of like a teenage angst film, but definitely a lot of the same notes. 40-Year-Old Virgin is another one. It's just like that whole like sense of Arrested Development, that sense of like, we're getting older now, but that doesn't mean we can't still have sex with high school girls. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a subplot in that old school movie where, okay, this dude is in a relationship, Mitch, right? Here's the plot of Old School. This guy, Mitch, is in this relationship with a girl, and he finds out that she, while he's out of town for work or whatever, is having literal gangbangs in his house. Like, she's secretly into, I guess, swinging or polyamory or whatever, and as soon as he leaves the house, man, there's like a line of dudes, and she just lets them run train on her. So he breaks up with her, right? And then his friends, both of whom exist in that area of Arrested Development that I'm talking about. They're both in their 30s. There's Frank the Tank, who is played by Will Ferrell, and he's recently married dude who's struggling with the idea that his wife expects him not to be a total party hound or whatever the fuck. And then there's Vince Vaughn's character, who is, he's a multi-millionaire owner of a big stereo franchise, like stereo stores, but he just regrets everything about his life. Like, he's got kids and he just wants to he hasn't given up on this idea of being like a party hound. And so what they do is they when Mitch breaks up, they go do this bro code shit where it's just like, oh, we're gonna get you laid, man. Which was it's so sad, because that is so what typified in my generation how dudes would help you through a breakup. It probably still does now, to be honest with you. I don't know. I haven't been young and in that kind of social situation in a while, but this like, oh, we're gonna get you laid, bro. And so they throw in this giant party, right? I'm coming to a point. They throw in this giant party at the new house that he's renting, which happens to be near a college. And he ends up, they have this big rager. Snoop Dogg is there with Bishop Don Magic Wand. You know what I mean? Like, his multimillionaire friend books Snoop, and he ends up finding this chick, and hooking up with her, and the movie cuts forward, and he's waking up next to this blonde girl, and he's like, look, I don't, and she's like, no, it's cool, we just had fun, it's all good, I gotta go to class, I'm out of here. Well, all right, so that happens. So he has this one night stand. Later in the movie, he's sitting in his boss's office, and the boss is giving him some lecture about something. And then the girl that he slept with walks in and goes, hey, daddy, blah, 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 blah. And then they see each other, and they're like, so he screwed the boss's daughter. And then the boss is like, and to think, in only a couple of years, you'll be out of high school. It's like, what? And that's the big gag, that he boned a 15-year-old or whatever. And it was just like that. That was, what it was. What it was. Whoopsie daisy. Accidents happen. I mean, I guess so. But yeah, the dude in the movie is like 30 years old, and all his friends are 30, and it's just them three, like three 30-somethings, and a bunch of like teenagers partying. That's basically what the movie's about. There's some contrivance where like the dean of the school that they live near is some dude they used to bully, and so he's angry at them, and to get back at them, he wants to like use the university's powers to designate the house that he's living in as for university use only. And so they have to create this fraternity where it's just, an endless cavalcade of psychosexual stunts and shit until the end of the movie. It's literally a bunch of 30-year-old dudes and a bunch of teenage dudes and a couple of really old crusty dudes like Blue, living in a state of perpetual I'm 19, And then the moral of the story is at the end, you don't have to turn into a total fuddy-duddy, but you do need to grow up. That's the arc of every one of these movies, and there were a fuck ton of them. It's like, what was that other one? What's that one where they all go to Vegas? And it's just like a bunch of established dudes, you know what I mean? They're all married or whatever. They go to Vegas to do the bachelor party. What is it called? Bachelor party? You know which one I'm talking about, right? It's got Bradley Cooper in it. Hangover. Thank you. That's the one. Same fucking shit, right? Am I right? It's like the end of that movie, the message is like, it's okay to stay young at heart, but we all have to grow up. Everybody has to grow up sometime. It's like my generation was obsessed with that idea at some point. That was what we really found funny and hilarious, was the awkwardness of your 30s, I guess. Peter Pan syndrome. Yep. No, that was definitely the message. If you look at how all of those movies resolve, it's always like, okay, it's time for it. Look, when I was a child, I did childish things, but I became a man and I set aside childish things. That's the moral of the stories. Look, gotta grow up sometime, and there's no time like the present, I guess, huh, guys? We can still party every once in a while, but this has just gotten out of hand. We created a whole fraternity. We basically blew up the city of Vegas in a drug-fueled haze. You know, it's like, all right, we get it. Lots of Gen Xers still act like children. I mean, can you blame us? We were raised by the most selfish generation. Like, we were raised by the boomers, you know? And to bring it full circle to what we were talking about earlier, the boomers were the hippie generation. So they grew up and kind of abandoned their principles and created this self-centered lifestyle and kind of forgot about their kids in a lot of cases. We were the first, not the last, first orphan generation, you know. They cut the cord with us a little early. Then the millennials came along, and I'm sorry, dude. Let's talk, okay? I'm willing to accept the sins of my generation, all right? I am at heart a Gen Xer. I'm technically a Gen X millennial cusper. Born in 1980, which is right at the turn of the dial, you know what I mean? But millennials are even worse. Even worse. Everything that was bad about Generation X has accelerated in the millennial generation. More self-centered, more, you know, materialistic. Definitely living in a larger sense of suspended animation. And, you know, I think the Zoomers are shaping up to be another leap in that direction, unfortunately. That's just you being an old man and not liking the younger generation. I actually like the younger generation. See, that's the thing, is like, I'm just spitting facts. You know, I shat on my generation too. I admitted that Gen X was a bunch of man babies. Whiny and with a huge reticence to quote unquote grow up and take responsibility for ourselves, and locked into a party mentality way too late and at way too great an expense, you know, and self-centered and kind of narcissistic as a generation. Like, you know, you're not hearing me going like, back in my day everything was perfect. It's like, no. What I'm saying, though, is that all of those negative traits have continued and escalated. Like, all of that has not, you know, it hasn't fallen back. The fuck is a cusper? I've never heard. So there's like, because there's ambiguity, if you go and look, when does Gen Z stop and when does millennials start? When do boomers stop and when does Gen X start? There's ambiguity as to which year in which it happens. There's basically a range of years in which you'll find people saying this is when, and because it's an ethereal concept, this idea of generations, and so I was born right smack dab in the middle of the transition between Gen X and millennial. So I was born in 1980, which means that I turned 20 at the turn of the millennium. So millennials are people that were born and raised in, you know what I mean, at the time of the millennium. That's how they track the millennial generation. And I was at the very end of, you know, the 80s and 90s and the very beginning of the millennium. So that's why I'm a cusper. Your story about griefing that guy and stealing his house key was one of the funniest things I've heard. Cheers, Paul. Time for me to slave at work. Oh, well, hopefully it goes by quickly. Yeah, I had a lot of fun playing those types of games back in the day before the rule mongers came in. Before the Care Bears took it over. As of today, now 1 year away from 30. Oh boy. Oh boy. I should clip that story and post it for non-patrons if it isn't already. Yeah, we probably will at some point, I would imagine. Either that or I'll just tell the story again. You know, it's hardly the first time I've told that story. I like that story. And that makes you feel old, like realizing you used to get mad you could play M-rated games, and now you're almost 30. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. I've been there, done that. You ever miss the Wild West days of the internet? Sure. I mean, in comparison to what it is now, I mean, it was definitely like there were downsides for sure. Howdy, Zonster. Hello, hello, hello. Elbow, elbow, wrist, wrist, touch your hair and blow a kiss. What is that from? That's from something. It's from some movie. The Queen's Wave, yeah. Advice for being 21 years old and feel like you're behind in life: you never catch up. So quit aiming for that exclusively. It's fine to progress, but quit putting somebody else's expectations on your development. You know, when I turned 25, that was probably the hardest age for me because I had a real complex because my dad instilled me with a bunch of bullshit information. He told me a bunch of times when I was younger that, like, if you're 25 years old and you don't know what you're going to be, you're never going to be nothing. And so when I turned 25, I was like, fuck, I don't know what I want. I don't even know if I want to be anything. I'm a loser. And it turned out it wasn't so. I did just okay for myself, you know what I mean? I'm fine. And so you will be too. Stop worrying so much. Yeah, look at Zonster, man. Zonster's gonna be 50. I'm right in behind him, but he's got some years on me. I want to be a blitzball. Okay. Well, you go for it, buddy. Be whatever you want to be. I just want to be a mother one day for whatever reason. I just do. It's called, you know, the biological drive to reproduce. It's the reason why we are here. So you are not strange for that. Mid Gen X, you're late Gen X. Yeah, we were just talking about how I'm basically a cusper. Like right at the end of Gen X, right at the beginning of the millennial generation. I got one foot in both. That's kind of how I feel a lot of times. I turned 27 in a week or two. Yeah. I mean, hey, time keeps on ticking, ticking, ticking. I mean, there's definitely a whole lot of nurture in how people turn out. That's kind of what I'm saying. Is, you know, every generation of human beings that comes along is by necessity a reflection of the generation that you know, preceded it. Because the most influential people in your life are going to be the people that raised you, and for most people that is their parents, and their parents for most people occupy a previous generation to theirs. And as a result of that, you've got echoes of your parents' upbringing all throughout your life, whether you want it or not. The way that you look at the world is largely informed by the way that your parents looked at the world, for better or for ill. That's the nurture part of the, twin drivers of human development. So, that's why I think it's useful to talk about generations. But I think that a lot of people look at like generational division as some sort of like horoscope that'll tell you everything you need to know about a person. No, it might inform some of that person's positions by necessity, but there's wide variation within kinds, as always. Watched Barry Lyndon last night. So good. Shouldn't have pushed it off so long. That's how I felt when I first saw Barry Lyndon. It wasn't that long ago, actually. I held off watching Barry Lyndon until probably like 2015 or 16, I think was the first time I saw it. And yeah, I've seen it a bunch of times since then, and definitely one of my favorite Kubrick movies. My parents were and are emotionally neglectful. Who you just reminded me of? You reminded me of Ali Sheedy's character in the movie The Breakfast Club. My home life is unsatisfying. That's such an interesting movie. It's such a peek at the Gen X kind of upbringing. What do your parents do to you? Is it bad? They ignore me. Yeah. A lot of iconic stuff in that movie. I watched Short Circuit 2 last night. It's Los Lobos, or is it Los Locos? I thought it was Los Lobos. The wolves. Maybe it was the Los Locos. It's been a while since I've seen it's Short Circuit 2 or Short Circuit 1. Los Locos kick your ass. Los Locos kick your face. Los Locos kick your balls into outer space. Well, I think one of the funniest things on DFF that you said was that Matt Walsh speaks as if he's on a bumpy train. He kind of does. He kind of does. I remember at one point, like, the chick in that movie, I think it's Ali Sheedy. Isn't it Ali Sheedy? Wow, weird coincidence there. I think it's Ali Sheedy. She kisses Johnny Five, and he's like, ooh, right on the sensor. Funny the little things that you remember. What's your thoughts on Bitcoin? Glad I didn't get a bunch of it. Glad I didn't listen to the legion of people that were telling me to dump my life savings into it. Right about now. Ooh, right on the sensor. Functioning 100%. Perfectly what? All right, buddy. Hey, whatever you say. Whatever you say, doll face. Boogie2988 lost his life savings in Bitcoin. I mean, that's part... Like, I think that was a convenient excuse for Boogie because it was an economic collapse that a lot of people were experiencing. I'm not saying Boogie didn't have a bunch of shit in Bitcoin, but have you seen, like, where Boogie lives? And all the cars that Boogie has had? Like, Boogie had a Tesla when it was still, like, a boutique item that you had to order one of one, you know what I mean? Boogie spent a lot of his money on frivolous luxury bullshit. And if he still had all of that money, his Bitcoin losses probably wouldn't have been as steep. Anyone that tells you that something functions great as both a currency and an investment run, I tend to agree. I tend to agree with that. Call me a boomer, but I tend to agree with that. I mean, Boogie was one of the first guys that I remember being a YouTuber and kind of being really open about showing off his extravagant wealth. I guess for a lot of times, like, people would make a bunch of money on YouTube and stuff, but there was this idea that you wanted to, like, stay humble so that, you know, it wasn't really apparent how much money you were raking in. You wanted to stay relatable. Boogie was the opposite of that, man. Boogie went fucking ape shit. Got himself a whole mouth of new teeth and bought a big ass house on a couple of acres and
got weight loss surgery that didn't work.
Yeah, got weight loss surgery that didn't work, and fucking, you know, he just went ape shit. He just went nuts. He bought a bunch of cars, traveled all over the world. You know, that shit adds up. Where is he now? Now he's living in that house that he bought, barely able to make the note on it, and begging his audience for donations so that he can continue living in it, basically.
And on probation, I think, for that shooting.
Sure, yeah. People stopped watching him because they lost their sight after seeing his new teeth. I mean, those teeth they could do with, like, some realistic yellowing or some shit, because they are pretty crazy. He didn't shoot someone, he shot at someone or discharged a firearm in the region of a person as a warning shot. There's video of it. Like, you can see it. He's definitely not aiming the gun at the dude, but
it's a reckless discharge or whatever.
He's in a fucking residential neighborhood firing off a pistol in his front yard in broad daylight at a, you know, within range of a dude that's there. So it's not great. But, you know, while I don't think that Boogie's reaction to that was defensible, I do kind of empathize with the fact that it was just some fucking weirdo. It's like some internet weirdo that was stalking outside his house and banging on his door at all hours of the day and shit.
Like, they were provoking something out of him.
Sure.
Wanted to provoke him
I don't
to do
think
something stupid.
I don't think they imagined they were going to get that good of a provocation, but yes, the whole idea was to provoke Boogie into saying or doing something stupid, and it worked, I guess. Yeah, I think his, you know, actions were rash and reckless, but I don't think that he was completely blameless. I think that there's a little bit of culpability on the part of the person that took time out of their life to step into his real life. That shit is just so weird to me, man. That's one of the things that I don't like about my job, is that, you know, every once in a while there's just a real crazy person that comes along that wants to insinuate themselves into your life in one way or another. And it's just like, man, leave me fucking be, bro. Please.
It is weird where you get recognized, though. Like, it was an Olive Garden of all places last time.
Yeah. True. Yeah, I get recognized at odd times. Very infrequently, but when I do, it's never when I expect.
It's like, no one, when y'all were doing your thing in LA, did people ever come up to you?
Well, the first DFF meetup in LA.
No, I mean, like, this most recent when you guys did the D&D thing.
Oh, I don't think, well, we didn't really go do much in public.
But you were still in LA.
Right. Yeah, no, I wasn't recognized in LA.
Yeah.
We were in La Brea, and like I said, we were pretty much shut in because we were working.
Yeah.
But yeah. Nope. Yeah, this last time I got recognized, it was just a couple months ago. I was in an undisclosed location. We were traveling, and we went to an Olive Garden, and ate our whole meal. And on our way out, one of the dudes that worked there was like, "Dude, are you Paul's ego?" It's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh my god, man, I'm a big fan." I shook his hand, and I was like, "Wow, man, weirdest places."
It was an OG Paul's Ego fan too.
Yeah, he was a Highdeology fan.
Pre DP even.
Yeah. I'd be sad if I saw Paul in real life. Why? Why don't Pessimist Productions do any advertising outside the fan base? We do from time to time. Like, we've paid for YouTube's advertising suite from time to time. The biggest problem that we've faced in that regard is that our main channel is demonetized, and what seems like permanently demonetized. Not fully demonetized, but to the point where we basically can't make ad money on it. I think that those types of things would be, are useful strategically done, and we're trying to position ourselves in such a way that maybe we can take advantage of stuff like that. I'd be too nervous to approach you if I saw you in public. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a mean guy. I'm a pretty nice dude. I might not fall over backwards to sit and talk to you for hours and hours because I'll probably be on my way somewhere, but I'm not gonna bite your head off or anything. Could I get a hug if I met you? Yeah, I'm a hugger. Can bring it in. Just don't be creepy about it. Yeah. Don't hold it too long, and don't insist on multiples.
Yeah. And I mean, read the room too.
Yeah,
if you're at a doctor's appointment or something. That's
yeah. If I'm on my way somewhere, yeah, read the room. No, I'm fine with hugging people. Yeah, a Christian side hug for sure. A sweaty pit hug. If you ever meet a famous person, just be chilling. Don't overstay your welcome. I mean, yeah, usually that's okay. There are some people that are in the public eye or whatever that are just really adverse to being approached and get really offended when it has. You got to kind of read the room. Why was DFF totally demonetized? From what we can figure out, it started with a stupid clip from one of the early, we used to call it, what was it called back in the day?
Flash fried.
Flash fried, which is, what is now called onion nuggets. But we covered a story about a rabbi that said that it was kosher to eat lab-grown pork. And for whatever reason, that was flagged as some anti-Semitic shit, and it put us on some kind of list where every one of our videos is scrutinized, and 99% of them are not monetizable as a result of it.
Just that stupid yellow monetization where you get a couple pennies for every person with YouTube Premium that watches.
Yep.
And you can have super chats.
Yep. So that, from what we can suss out, that was when the problem started, and it's the stupidest fucking reason. There was nothing anti-Semitic. If you watched, we've had to take the clip down, but if you were to watch the clip, there's nothing about it that's problematic or anti-Semitic. We were just kind of laughing at the absurdity of a rule that doesn't allow you to eat pig, but will allow you to eat pig that's synthesized in a lab. That was it. That was it. Just poking a little fun.
Yeah, it's not like you guys didn't try. It's like you guys were being conservative. You weren't asking for full monetization on everything with a bunch of swearing or sex or anything like that.
No. No, it's just an absurd system that you have to try and navigate as a content creator. And we're adopting some of the things that other people do. Doing these longer form streams and then taking them down immediately and having an archive for our patrons, and then clipping those out and releasing those clips on a separate channel with the goal towards gaining and maintaining monetization. That's it. That's what we're doing.
Yep, and that first clip actually came out today. I'll throw the link to the channel in there again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can go subscribe to the Links channel. Paul, I'm at work on break and you're streaming, and I wanted to leave an obnoxious comment. Well, you did it. You did it. All right, I'm out of here. I'll see you guys later. Bye.